to episode 2 of this series. I'm Peter Davison of International Food Management, and again I'm welcoming David Balkwell, MD of Balkwell Consulting. Today we're going to talk about process mapping. We touched on process mapping in the last episode, David. They sort of cover procedures and things and replace procedures, but let's get into the detail. What's good about them?
Okay, well, I think one of the interesting points is that, in a way, understanding the difference between procedures and process maps is the first important step. The reason that's important is because we easily get confused between what is a procedure, what is a process, what is a process map, what is a procedure, what is documented, what is not documented. And I think that's probably the root of the problem in most management systems. And management systems representatives misunderstand it. But I think there's also an issue there with regards to some of those organisations that actually visit companies and pass comment and interpretation and provide comment on compliance with regards to ISO 9000.
So let's make that clarity clear. Let's tell everyone.
Okay. Well, I think a process map is, as we did explain in the first episode, just to recap, is our opportunity to identify activity steps, to collect groups of activities together, to formulate processes. So we need to structure our approach. We need to think about top-level processes, we need to think about sub-level processes. Now, to produce something which is, again I used this term earlier, but an holistic system, we need to try to visualise our management system. So we think about trying to create a structure, something we can visualise. It's quite simple really to get it in our minds, but very simple terms. The customer rings up, we do something in the middle, we chuck it out the other end. But in fact it's more complicated. And all that does is it just is simplifying figure 1 in the standard in ISO 9000, 2008 and 2000. But to take that into more detail, at the front end, when I say the customer rings up, we've got business planning, we've got materials ordering, we've got maybe warehousing of raw materials, we've got goods received and goods checking, we've got a whole series of things, we've got customer focus going on right at the very beginning. Right at the very end, when I say we chuck it out to the other end, we've got audit, we've got checking of non-conformance, we've got corrective action, we've got management review, customer satisfaction going on there as well. And in the middle, we just do what we do. Doing what we do is our business. So trying to think about what drops out of that. It's a whole series of process maps that reflect exactly what we do. And they're going to, of course, get wider and wider, that set of process maps, as we progress down the stack. And the number of process maps that would be produced, of course, would be subject to the size, scale and complexity of the organisation. So certain process maps are applicable to some and not others. But what we then need to recognise is something called support processes. Processes that aren't about product or service realisation. They're things like document control of records. Now, we might choose to produce a process map as an alternative to one of the 6 procedures, and there's more procedures required in 14,000 and 18,000 of course. But one of the interesting things is, of course, that often it's best to double your bets and say, well, I've got a process map for records control, but I've also got a more detailed procedure behind that, just to show the substance of it, just in case we get that pedantic audit through on one of those unfortunate days.
But what will the process map, how will it benefit my employees? What do they get out of it better?
The psychology of the process map, of course, is as we said in the first episode, is to stay focused on the process and the process steps. And there's a lot of psychology in this, and part of that is to actually try to get into our mind, what do we need to put in? We don't want loads of symbols and boxes and pieces of paper that stretch from ceiling to floor. What we try to do is to try to connect with the brain. What do the users of the processes really want? What do they focus on first? And an interesting concept is a newspaper. You take any newspaper, and what do we first see? You take any newspaper, and what do we first see across this newspaper? We see the pictures. We see the stars, we see the face, we see the heading, we see the big words, and then the brain starts to think about what the small words say underneath that. And that's a natural human thing. So the same with any picture. What do? We take this, we look at the car first, then we look at the big words, then we look at the small words in that order. Think about our process map. What do? We could put some pictures relating to that particular work area, such as goods inwards. So what does it happen? When the process map opens up, we see pictures, real pictures of goods inwards and the warehouse and delivery and checking. And what the brain's being told there is that's what I'm going to learn about, that's what I'm going to see. So the process steps then give me the wordy detail. But of course, going across the page gives us the opportunity to identify responsibilities, it gives us room underneath the process maps to put responsibilities. And critical control points are a key part of these process maps, because if we don't recognise the need to identify critical control points, well, when I say critical control point, I mean a key step, something must happen, a form needs to be filled in, so we hyperlink the form, or we spell out in the box that an approval has to happen. We have to check goods received because there may be some external subcontracted work that's taken place on the product, or some external service that we buy in.
Now this is a big change that you're suggesting. So the viewer's going to be a little bit up in the air at the moment. You can see them thinking, their mind's going all over the place. So do we have any examples that we could show
what
people?
We can do is we can show a slide here, I guess, of a typical process map for product or service area, and then one for one of these support processes. So just take a few seconds and have a look at these, and we'll try and zoom in on them as well. Okay, maybe that just gave you a little bit of an insight into what we're talking about here. But I think it's important to think about these process maps not just as flat pages, not just as another gimmick. Actually, this was introduced 9 years ago, and I think really the opportunity was presented to business 8-9 years ago. And I think where the gap is that organisations, and even some certification organisations, haven't really picked up on the point. I think it's a real shame, because there's golden opportunity here for organisations to go lean, to go mean, to go process focused, to connect with their objectives and targets, and make sure that their management systems demonstrate and deliver continual improvement.
So David, you've got us all very excited now. We're all wanting to do this. So where do we go in episode 3?
Okay. Well, I think the only way we can really explain this in more detail now is we've actually produced a video of a live online system. So it'd be a good idea if you take the time. Thanks for watching, but we've put a link in shortly at the end of this particular episode. If you come back to us on that link, which is an email address, we'll actually send you the link to a video which shows you around a live system.
Okay, thank you.